Well, Kathy, the weather here is still pretty warm and calm, and that means we're likely to see many more small boats crossing the channel in the coming days. The French authorities say they're certainly conscious of that. We've been speaking to migrants and asylum seekers here who say that despite the tragedy this weekend, they're waiting to set off tonight, tomorrow, as soon as they get the go-ahead from their smugglers. And whenever a ship sinks, there's condemnation from politicians on all sides of the actions of those smugglers. They're certainly heartless, but ultimately, as long as there are people who are desperate enough to make this journey, there are going to be others who are willing to profit off them. One question that always crops up, why take such a high risk to get to the UK from France? Well, one thing to point out is that France, Germany, a number of other European countries do generally receive many more asylum seekers than Britain. Others that we've been speaking to here today, though, said they feared that staying on in France could mean they'd be deported back to the Eastern European countries where they first entered the European Union, for example, whilst others were saying that they hope to link up with friends, family in the UK. Here's more on what we found. Not far from Dunkirk, a small market with customers from across the world. Eritreans on the run from an oppressive dictatorship, South Sudanese escaping poverty and unrest, and Afghans fleeing life under the Taliban. Ramzan used to show off his tattoos with pride, but the martial arts fighter from northern Afghanistan says he was jailed by the Taliban because of them. To teach him a lesson, they sliced his arm.
I had tattoos all over my body. Before the Taliban, that wasn't a problem at all. But when they took power, they arrested me and said this is not what a Muslim does. They beat me badly, and when I was released, I left the country. I've been here 3 weeks waiting to get to the UK. It's very difficult. There's not enough food and no place to stay.
Over the weekend, at least 6 Afghans drowned off the French coast. Dozens of others were plucked from the sea. This teenager's 16-year-old friend has been missing ever since, but he's still determined to try and make it across to the UK. Now you're going to do the same journey as him. Aren't you afraid?
Of course I'm afraid. I'm a human being, just as my friend was a human being. But look at the kids growing up in London and the life they have. We want that too. We want to study and make something of our lives. All the Afghans that have gone to the UK have gone with pain in their hearts, but they've made it, just like the Brits born there.
The deaths at sea, a human tragedy, and politically uncomfortable for a Conservative government trumpeting a tough approach. Britain's spending hundreds of millions of pounds trying to prevent migrants from crossing the channel. So far this year, numbers are slightly down compared to last year, but the government's still a long way off from fulfilling what it's turned into a key policy pledge: to stop the boats. And there's still no policy that offers asylum seekers from across the world an alternative route, one that's safe, one that's legal. Across the channel in Dover, more migrants were brought ashore by rescue workers today. The vast majority of asylum seekers in Britain are judged to have valid claims. But back in France, police attempt to stop them boarding boats almost every night. Then they're free to try again. Though there are plans for a new detention centre, part funded by Britain, a move welcomed by France's far right.
As a French politician, I said that we should give them boats to go to Britain if they want, and that will be the problem of the British authorities. But no, it's supposed to be international cooperation.
The migrants here are at the centre of heated, at times toxic, political debate. They have been for years and will likely continue to be for many more, as new generations grow up, looking for their escape from poverty and conflict.
Well, let's go now to Paul McNamara in Downing Street. Paul.
Yeah, the Prime Minister's back from holiday. It's not the welcome home anyone would have wanted, because just outside Downing Street this evening, a vigil for those 6 lives lost in the Channel on Saturday, organised by the group Stand Up to Racism. And remember, those lives were lost at what had been the government's small boats week. Now, for those who, like the Prime Minister, were on holiday, just to give you a quick idea of how Small Boats Week went, well, it started off with briefings to 2 newspapers that asylum seekers could be sent to the Ascension Island. Within hours, that was poo-pooed by Downing Street insiders. Midweek, the Conservative Party deputy chairman said that Conservative Party immigration policy had been a failure. And then at the end of the week, 39 asylum seekers who'd been put onto that barge off the coast of Dorset, the Bibby Stockholm, were removed from that barge off the coast of Dorset because a potentially deadly bacteria had been found in the water supply. None of that was ideal for the government. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, was asked about it this morning. This is what he said.
Well, ministers were informed on Thursday evening and took urgent action on a precautionary basis. But it is right that we focus on the high cost of hotels. It's costing the British taxpayer £6 million a day. That is far too high. So that's why we're exploring options such as the barges, but we're doing so in a way that retains safety.
There is a question about who knew what and when. Steve Barclay there said that ministers were told about this on Thursday. Dorset Council is adamant they told the Home Office about this on Tuesday. 48 hours is quite a discrepancy when we're talking about potentially deadly bacteria. All we're being told is that the Home Office is still trying to clarify if officials may have been made aware of this earlier. Now, as you may expect, Labour have been capitalising on this, calling all of it an embarrassment. What we're not hearing from Labour, though, is that they would ban the use of those barges were Keir Starmer ever to make it into Downing Street, because they're not clear of the situation they may inherit. He was asked about it today. This is what Keir Starmer had to say.
The problem is that the government hasn't done enough work to break the gangs that are running this trade, this vile trade, and to process the applications. And so the government has made a complete and utter mess of this. I mean, Small Boats Week last week was a complete fiasco. We would fix the fundamentals, go after the gangs that are running this, and process the claims so we don't have this problem in the first place.
What's interesting about that line from Sir Keir Starmer, that Small Boats Week has been a complete fiasco, is that I've heard exactly the same thing from Conservative backbench MPs from the right of the party. One of them texted me simply, PR disaster. Another one saying to me that given everything that's happened, maybe Sir Wella Braverman should be ushered out of the Home Office. Now remember, MPs from the right of the party are those that would form Sir Wella Braverman's base. They're now saying maybe she shouldn't have the post. I asked, how would you take that? Their response was, well, where was she last week when all of this was unfolding? Now, I've been told that she was actually working hard. We just didn't see very much of her on the TV as all of this was unfolding. Now, none of these are headlines that the Prime Minister would have wanted to return home to. Least of all, remember, a Prime Minister who at the beginning of this year and many times since has stood in front of a podium which read, "Stop the boats."
Paul, thanks very much. Well, I'm joined now by Louis O'Leary, who's a Conservative Dorset County Councillor for the area near where the Bibby Stockholm is moored. Louis O'Leary, if you could clear up some of the issues that Paul raised there about who knew what when did the council tell the Home Office, to your knowledge?
I was made aware of it on Thursday via an email and some press outlets, but I'm not sure when Dorset Council officers, the professionals and the people dealing with the day-to-day issue were aware of it, as it were.
Are you pretty angry, though, that you only found out on Thursday, along with the Home Secretary, and actually the test came back for Legionnaires on the Monday? So that's quite a long delay, isn't it?
It's a long delay, and I think, Suella Braverman might be upset about not being informed about the ongoing to the barge. But I mean, she's welcome to join the club with us, because we've been left in the dark largely through the whole time this has been going on in the last couple of months. So there's nothing new for us to find out something after
sounds like
it's happened.
It sounds like you're almost relishing a kind of sweet revenge there on the Home Secretary.
I mean, no, the Legionnaires is a very serious disease, and I don't wish anybody to be in danger of getting it. But the barge is becoming a bit like the 7 plagues of Egypt out of the Bible. You know, first we had the fire issue, then we had the Legionnaires' disease. It's just an ongoing disaster, like an episode of Fawlty Towers.
Well, I mean, as you say, it's no laughing matter. And the fact is that you were kept in the dark, the Home Secretary was kept in the dark. There was this delay. The government has suggested the council was responsible for delaying for 2 days before the UK Health Security Agency was informed. And meanwhile, people's lives are at stake. So who should take responsibility for this absolute fiasco?
Well, Dorset Council's never wanted the barge. We voted a motion through at full council saying we request the barge be withdrawn immediately. If central government can blame local government, it will do so at every opportunity, and that's the same for any government, not just this government. You know, they try and shuffle the blame onwards.
But is it central government's responsibility, or is it the council's responsibility for failing to enact what central government asked it to do effectively?
Well, I mean, you could argue perhaps it is the local government in terms of the operational thing, but if the barge wasn't there, there wouldn't be the issue, and we do not want the barge. So, you know, they have foisted the barge on us with the deal they've done with Portland Port, no consultation, no consent. So, you know, is what it is, I'm afraid, but in that regards.
Right, well, the barge is still there and awaiting its asylum seekers. When do you think they will finally be housed there? When is this whole issue going to be resolved?
Well, as I said, it's becoming, one issue after the other. We had the issue with the fire inspectorate saying it's not safe. Now we've had the Legionnaires' disease fiasco. Like I said, what's next? I'm sort of half expecting a plague of locusts. Or something, the water to turn into blood, but it just seems to be one issue after another. So we see what comes next, and unless they put their hands up and admit that this is not an acceptable way of dealing with this issue, and it's not this myth of it saving money is just that, a myth.
Right. So you'd like the government to use this, warning of disease and pestilence, however you describe it, to ditch the whole thing, then?
Well, yeah, I mean, people get frustrated with politicians in government, local and central, when they make mistakes and fail to admit they've made a mistake. And I just wish the government would set an example and say, look, we tried this, it didn't work. It's not going to save any money. It's not wanted. It's not a very good way of housing people in many ways. And just say, look, at the end of the day, it's 500. It's going to house 500 people. And on a good day, 500 people come over on the channel on nice sunny weather. So it's a drop in the ocean, as it were, really.
But hasn't every neighbourhood got to do its bit to help tackle this crisis? You're being a bit of a NIMBY, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I've said exactly that in terms of doing its bit, the people responsible should take on it. I mean, not a barge, but, I'm sure there's a lot of areas in Fareham that they could go, or Richmond, or, as I've said before, outside the Thames on a barge, or closer to the people responsible for this mess.
So the Prime Minister should take some in his constituency, should he?
Yeah, I think it's hypocritical to be lectured to by these people saying we must all do our bit when they're not having any.
Well, just finally, you've said it's a fiasco. You've described it in sort of faintly comical terms, but also admitted it's a very serious issue. Do you think the Home Secretary should be considering her position after all of this?
I mean, I've always been a supporter of Suella Braverman, as someone who's, that way inclined within the party. I've always been, but I mean, this once again is a lot of people talking the talk and then they're not able to walk the walk. I mean, if the Conservatives don't sort out the illegal immigration issue, it will be so long Suella, so long Sunak, and they'll be taking a lot of MPs with them, and no doubt councillors, I suspect. And
you don't seem to have a lot of confidence that they can sort this issue.
Well, I mean, they are trying with things like the new immigration bill. I'm just not seeing any results, as it were. You say numbers are down. I suspect that's largely to do with the weather. And closer cooperation with France is a positive step, it sounds like. But, the proof will be in the pudding.
Louis O'Leary, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.